Atlanta, Georgia. December. The kind of cold that doesn't announce itself, it just arrives. Settles into the streets and the yards and the quiet houses before anyone thinks to prepare for it. Pan down. One neighborhood, one street. One craftsman house with a porch that catches afternoon light and a yard with a single oak tree, bare now, holding its shape against the gray sky. Inside, a kitchen, early morning, still dark beyond the window. A man stands at the counter, both hands around a mug. Not moving, not rushing. The coffee already made, already cooling, like he's been standing there long enough to forget about it. His face, still, composed, the face of a man who has decided something. On the table behind him, a manila envelope. Closed. Waiting. He doesn't look at it. He already knows what's inside. And somewhere across this city, other poor people are about to find out what he's been quietly building while they were busy underestimating him. The mug lowers, he reaches for his keys. The elevator doors opened on the 14th floor. Marcus Delaney stepped out. He was holding 24 roses. Red ones. The kind you carry through an airport feeling slightly foolish. The kind that smell like effort and hope, and all the things a man does when he still believes the world is what he thinks it is. The hallway stretched ahead of him, long, carpeted in deep burgundy that swallowed the sound of his footsteps completely. Abstract paintings on the walls. The particular smell of expensive hotels. Cleaned air and something floral and the faint suggestion of money. Room 1401, 1403, T5. Not stop, not because he heard anything, not yet. Because something in his chest had gone quiet in a way that had nothing to do with calm. The way a room goes quiet right before a storm decides to arrive. He stood there, and then he heard it. Not words, not at first, just sound. The specific, unmistakable sound of his wife's voice doing something it had no business doing in a hotel hallway in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her intimate voice. The one she used in their bedroom. The one he had believed until approximately this moment belonged entirely to the two of them. He did not knock on the door. He did not yell. He did not throw the roses or sink to his knees or do any of the things a man is supposed to do when the architecture of his life collapses in real time. He stood there for exactly as long as he needed to. Then he turned around, walked back to the elevator, pressed the button for floor 11. The doors closed, and in the polished steel reflection, Marcus Delaney looked at himself. A man holding 24 red roses, looking like someone who had just received news that could not be unreceived. Because he had, he pressed 11. The elevator descended, and somewhere behind a closed door on the 14th floor, neither of the two people inside it had any idea that the quietest man they would ever underestimate had just made a decision that would take everything from them. 10 days before that elevator, Marcus Delaney was a man with an ordinary Tuesday morning, which meant coffee first, always coffee first. He used a French press, had for 11 years. Simone called it precious, called him the last man in America who refused to own a Keurig. He didn't argue. He just pressed the coffee, slow and deliberate, the way his father had shown him, standing at the kitchen window of the house they'd bought together in Decatur, Georgia. A craftsman 3-bedroom with a porch that got afternoon light and a yard with one oak tree that neither of them had planted but both of them had claimed. Those 15 minutes? Before Simone woke up, before the day became the day. That was his. He was 34 years old. He taught American history at Carver Academy. He made $52,000 a year and had never once been embarrassed about it. He loved his job the way people love things they chose with their whole chest. Not because it was easy, but because it was true. He loved the questions his students asked without knowing how important they were. He loved the way history kept posing its problem in different costumes, century after century. What kind of person will you be when it actually costs you something? He had a drawer in his nightstand. In the drawer was a card Simone had written him in the first year they were together. Her handwriting, blue ink. The card said, "You are the steadiest person I have ever known. Don't ever stop being that." He hadn't read it in a while. He should have. Simone Delaney was a senior account manager at Vertex Pharma Solutions. She was 33 years old and genuinely good at her work in the way that people are good at things they have sacrificed for. She drove a company-leased white Lexus. She carried a leather tote that cost more than Marcus's first car. She had been climbing steadily and deliberately for 6 years, and Marcus had watched her do it with something close to admiration. They had met at a friend's barbecue 7 years ago. She'd be dancing by the table eating cornbread, and reading something on her phone and laughing at it without caring that no one else was in on the joke. He thought that was the most genuinely attractive thing he'd ever seen. Someone who laughed for themselves. He walked over and asked what she was reading. She said, an article about how men always ask women what they're reading when they actually just want an excuse to talk to them. He said, guilty. She said, at least you're honest. They talked for 3 hours. 6 years of marriage later, the ramen apartment in East Atlanta, the wedding at a friend's backyard with string lights and a borrowed sound system, the house in Decatur, the kitchen they'd renovated together last spring, spending 3 weekends arguing pleasantly about cabinet hardware and ending up with something they both loved. He'd thought they were building something permanent. He had assumed permanence. He would not make that mistake again. Tuesday morning, Simone came downstairs already packed. Vertex Southeastern Regional Conference in Charlotte. 3 days at the Meridian Grand Hotel. Her SVP, Darius Calloway, would be leading the company's presentation. Big opportunity. The kind of conference where careers pivoted on the right conversation in the right room. She moved through the kitchen with the efficient energy of someone who had somewhere important to be. Checked her phone. Checked it again. Some smiles and something on the screen and set it face down on the counter before Marcus could see what it was. Not unusual. Just Tuesday. He handed her the coffee he'd poured. Oat milk, 1 sugar, same as always. And she took it without looking up. This one could move forward for us, Marcus. I know. Darius thinks I'm ready for the director position. He said if this conference goes the way he expects, he'll push it through formally in the next few weeks. You're ready, Marcus said. She finally looked at him then, the real smile, the one that still reached her eyes when she wasn't performing for anyone. I'll call you tonight, I'll be here. She kissed him at the door, quick, distracted, rolling her new luggage behind her. The good kind with the smooth wheels that don't catch on anything. She loaded it into the Lexus and backed out of the driveway without looking back at the house. Marcus stood on the porch for a moment longer than he needed to, then went back inside to finish his coffee. Wednesday afternoon changed everything, and it changed everything for the most ordinary possible reason. Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table grading essays on the Reconstruction era. The particular irony of that subject matter would not occur to him until later, when his phone rang. His Aunt Harriet, 76 years old, his father's older sister. The one who called every few weeks just to confirm he was eating real food, even though she knew perfectly well he'd been married for 6 years. Baby, she said, check your account. Aunt Harriet. Your birthday was 3 months ago and I've been feeling terrible about forgetting. I sent you. Don't argue with me about it. He checked the account while she was still talking. $2,800. He sat with that for a minute, looked at the essays on the table, looked at the window, thought about Simone in Charlotte, 3 hours away, at a conference that was going to change things for them. He thought, when's the last time you surprised her? He thought, when's the last time you did something that wasn't routine? He thought about the restaurant she'd screenshot on her phone 4 months ago. Someplace in Charlotte she'd seen on a travel account. She'd shown it to him over dinner. We should go here someday. And someday had not yet arrived. Take that woman somewhere nice, Harriet said. Life moves fast, Marcus, you hear me? It moves fast. Yes, ma'am. He booked a flight while she was still on the phone. Early Thursday morning. Non-stop. He found the restaurant, Luca's, Charlotte, reservations available at 8 p.m., and booked a table for 2. He ordered flowers from a local florist for delivery to the hotel on Thursday afternoon. 2 dozen roses. Red, her favorite. He thought about her face when she opened the door. The real surprise. The kind you can't manufacture. He thought she's going to love this. He packed a small bag, his good shirt, his better jeans, the cologne she'd bought him for his birthday 2 years ago that he saved for occasions worth saving it for. He did not tell Simone he was coming. He wanted it to be a surprise. That was the thing about Marcus Delaney. He still believed in surprises. He still believed that the people you loved deserved them. He didn't sleep well that night. Not because anything felt wrong. Just because he was, for the first time in a long time, genuinely looking forward to something. In the morning, he drove to the airport feeling something close to hopeful. He would remember that feeling later, the specific texture of it. How it sat in his chest on the drive to Hartsfield-Jackson. How it felt like something worth protecting. He would remember it because of how completely it disappeared. The Meridian Grand was everything it looked like online. Tall ceilings, marble floors. A lobby where sound moved differently, absorbed by expensive surfaces. A chandelier that looked like someone had frozen water mid-pour and suspended it from the ceiling. Men in suits having conversations where no one looked directly at anyone else. Marcus checked in at the front desk and explained he was surprising his wife. Gave her name. Asked if they could ring her room or leave a message to expect him. The woman behind the counter, her name tag said Terry, typed something. Looked at her screen. Typed something else. Her expression shifted in a way that Marcus registered without understanding. Not pity exactly. Something that lived underneath pity. Sir, she said carefully. The reservation under Ms. Delaney's corporate account, it's listed for 2 guests. The second name is Darius Clay. Silence. Not the dramatic kind, not the movie kind with something swelling in the background. Silence. 4 seconds of it. Then Marcus said, I see, I'll need a room for tonight. His voice came out level. Completely level. He did not know how. Terry looked at him for a moment, like she recognized this situation and knew there was nothing she could offer that would help. Of course, sir. I have a room available on the 11th floor. That's fine. He handed over his card, took the key, collected the roses from the concierge where they'd been delivered, carried them to the elevator, pressed 11. Room 1107 was nice. King bed, a window looking out at the Charlotte skyline. A minibar he did not open despite wanting to. He set the roses on the table by the window, looked at them for a moment, sat down on the edge of the bed and put his hands on his knees and breathed. His phone buzzed. Simone, a text, not a call, long day. Darius had us in back-to-back sessions until 7. About to order room service and crash. Miss you, love you. He stared at the message. Miss you, love you. He typed back. Hope it's going well. Miss you too. Send. He sat there. The city outside the window doing what cities do at night. Lights and movement and the complete indifference of large places to individual pain. Then something shifted in him. Not dramatically. Not with crack or a crash, more like a dial slowly. From one setting to another. He opened the notes app on his phone, started writing, not to anyone. Not a message, just documentation, date, location, what Terry had said, the room number, the time, the name on the reservation. He had been a history teacher for 9 years. He understood evidence, what it was, what it meant, what it required. He wrote until he had everything he could document from that lobby interaction. Then he set the phone down. Then he picked up the room service menu, ordered a dinner, ate it at the small table by the window, across from 24 red roses that had been meant for a different version of this evening. He did not cry. He thought about crying and decided it could wait. There were things to do first. The next morning, before his return flight, Marcus rode the elevator to the 14th floor. He told himself he needed to know, not just suspect, not just infer from a name on a hotel reservation. He needed the kind of knowing you cannot talk yourself out of later. He walked the hallway, slowly. Room 1401, 1403, 1405, 1407. He stopped outside 1407. This time he did hear something. Her voice. Through the door. Unmistakable. He stood there long enough. Then he turned around, took the elevator down, and walked into the lobby. He was carrying the roses still. He sat down in a chair near the window. And that was when a woman sat down across from him. Without being invited, without asking. She looked to be around 40. The kind of tired that lives behind the eyes rather than on the face. The kind that comes from carrying something heavy for a long time and becoming proficient at not letting it show. She looked at him for a moment without speaking. You're Marcus Delaney, Simone's husband, not a question. He looked at her. Someone who left Vertex 2 years ago, she said, and signed a paper promising not to talk about why. She paused. My name is Camille Okafor. She placed a manila envelope on the table between them. She did not push it toward him, just set it there, like she was offering something and leaving the choice entirely to him. I've been watching Darius Calloway do this for a long time, she said. I didn't know who to give this to, until I saw you standing in that hallway last night. Marcus looked at the envelope, he thought. She saw me. He thought, she's been watching too, why? He said, because, she said. I'm tired of being the only one who knows. She stood, straightened her coat, looked at him with something that was not quite apology and not quite solidarity but lived somewhere between them. Take it or leave it. Either way, I'm sorry. She walked away across the lobby, through the revolving door, into the Charlotte morning. Marcus sat with the envelope on the table in front of him, the roses beside him, the city outside. He thought about Aunt Harriet. Life moves fast, Marcus, he thought. Yes, it does. He picked up the envelope. He did not open it in the hotel. He carried it to the airport. He carried it through security and onto the plane and held it in his lap for the entire flight back to Alaska. He looked out the window at clouds and thought about the first time he and Simone had flown somewhere together. A weekend in New Orleans, early in their marriage, before her salary had climbed to where it was now, when they'd shared one small suitcase between them to avoid the baggage fee and laughed about it at the gate. He thought about her laugh. He thought about what he'd heard through a hotel room door on the 14th floor of the Meridian Grand. He thought about the card in his nightstand. "You are the steadiest person I have ever known," he thought. "I'm going to need that to be true." The plane landed at Hartsfield-Jackson at 11:42 a.m. Marcus Delaney collected his bag from the overhead bin, walked through the terminal, and got in his car. He drove home, made lunch, ate it standing at the kitchen counter. Then he went to the junk drawer next to the stove, the one where they kept tech-out menus and spare batteries, and the birthday candles they'd never remembered to use. And he looked at something he'd put there 3 weeks ago. A business card. Denise Hartwell, Family Law, Buckhead. He'd picked it up from a colleague at school whose divorce had been handled, in her words, with no unnecessary drama. He'd kept it without quite examining why. He'd moved it from his wallet to the drawer when it felt too significant to carry on his person. He knew now why he'd kept it. He picked it up, put it in his shirt pocket. He had a few more things to do before Saturday. Saturday was when he'd pick Simone up from the airport, and he needed to be ready, not angry, not broken, ready. He opened his phone, found a number he hadn't dialed in almost 2 years, pressed call. Randall Fuqua answered on the second ring. He always answered on the second ring. Marcus, Randall, a pause, the comfortable kind. The kind between two men who have known each other long enough to hear the difference between a call that needs small talk and one that doesn't. "Talk to me," Randall said. So Marcus talked. He stood in his kitchen, keeping his voice low out of habit even though no one was home, and told Randall everything. Charlotte. Room at the front desk, the lobby. The woman named Camille Okafor who had sat down without being invited and left an envelope on the table. Randall listened without interrupting. When Marcus finished, the silence on the other end lasted long enough to be meaningful. "How long have you suspected?" Randall said. Marcus thought about that honestly. "Longer than I admitted to myself." "Okay, breath, don't do anything. Don't say anything to her, don't change anything she can see. Give me 2 days, 2 days, and Marcus, yeah, I'm sorry, I know." He hung up. He opened the envelope from Camille Okafor at the kitchen counter that night. Under the overhead light that was slightly too bright. The one Simone had always said she wanted to replace with something warmer. He read it standing up, all of it. And by the time he finished, the steadiness that Simone had once written about on a card in blue ink was the only thing he had left. He folded everything back into the envelope, carefully, exactly as it had been, set it on the counter, looked at it for a long moment, then went to bed. He did not sleep well, but he slept. And in the morning he got up and made his coffee and waited for Saturday to arrive. Because some things you do slowly. Not because you're afraid, because you understand that speed and readiness are not the same thing. And Marcus Delaney intended to be ready. Saturday arrived the way Saturdays do when you're dreading them. Too quickly. Too ordinarily. The sun came up on schedule. The neighbor's dog barked at something. The garbage truck made its rounds 2 streets over. The world completely indifferent to the fact that Marcus Delaney was about to pick up his wife from the airport and spend an entire evening pretending he didn't know what he knew. He showered, dressed, made eggs he didn't taste, drove to Hartsfield-Jackson. Simone came through the arrivals door at 3:17 p.m. pulling her rolling luggage, wearing the navy blazer she always traveled in, her hair still neat despite the flight. She looked like a woman returning from a successful trip, which in certain specific ways she was. She saw him and her face did the thing it always did. Opened up, lit baby. She came to him and he put his arms around her and she felt exactly like she always felt. And that was the worst part. Nothing had changed in the way she fit. The familiar weight of her, the smell of her hair. He held her for the appropriate amount of time. "God, it's good to be home. Good trip." "Yeah," he said, "exhausting. Incredible." Darius knocked it out of the park with the presentation. The regional directors were impressed. "That's great." He took her bag, loaded it into the car. She talked for the entire drive home. Conference sessions, networking dinners, a funny thing that happened at breakfast on Thursday morning. involving a spilled carafe of orange juice and the regional VP from Tennessee. Her voice was animated, alive. She had not a single tell. Marcus asked the right questions at the right moments, laughed when laughing was called for, made sounds of interest. He was performing attentiveness and she was performing normalcy, and neither of them knew the other was performing, except he knew, which made every mile of that drive feel like walking across ice. That evening they opened a bottle of wine, sat on the couch, watched a cooking show she liked. She fell asleep with her head on his shoulder 20 minutes in. He sat there in the blue television light, her breathing against his neck, and looked at the wall across the room where their wedding photo hung in a frame she'd picked out, he thought. She still fits exactly here, he thought. That doesn't change what's true. He thought about the envelope sitting in his office drawer, about the name Camille Okafor, about a woman who had lost a career and a sense of reality and 3 years of her life to the same man who was currently advancing his wife's. He thought about what Camille had written in her documentation. One line in particular, near the end. By the time I understood what had happened, I had already signed the paper. And the worst part wasn't losing the position. The worst part was realizing I'd lost it to someone who never knew I existed. He sat with Simone asleep on his shoulder, and he grieved, quietly, for exactly as long as the television ran one more segment. Then he turned it off, carried her grief and his own to bed, and waited for Monday. Monday began with coffee and a text from Randall. Ready when you are. Simone left for work at 7:40, charcoal blazer. The one she called her power outfit. She'd mentioned a team meeting at 9. She kissed Marcus at the door. The quick, distracted kind she'd been giving him for months. And the Lexus backed out of the driveway without her looking back. Marcus waited until the car reached the end of the street and disappeared. Then he called Randall. They met at a diner in Midtown, not somewhere with reclaimed wood and pour-over coffee. A real diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and ceramic mugs, and a counter where the same people had been sitting on the same stools for 20 years. Randall was already in a booth near the back when Marcus arrived. He had a laptop open and 2 coffees on the table, and the particular expression of a man who has found things he wishes he hadn't. Marcus sat down. Randall turned the laptop so they could both see it. Darius Calloway, Randall said, a 42 years old, SVP at Vertex Pharma Solutions, married to Glorica, works part-time as a pediatric nurse so she can be home when their kids get out of school. 2 kids. Maya, 13. Theo, 10. House in Brookhaven, appraised at $670,000. Mortgage is $4,200 a month. Okay, he's been at Vertex for 9 years. He's their top revenue generator. Brought in approximately $15 million in contracts last fiscal year. Randall Paul paused. He's also done this before. Marcus looked at the screen. Lorraine Webb. Left Vertex in 2021 after 8 years with the company. The official announcement said she was pursuing other opportunities. She wasn't. Randall pulled up another document. I spoke to 2 former colleagues of hers off the record. There was a closed-door meeting with HR. A number written on a piece of paper. A choice between that number and a very public, very difficult process that nobody at Vertex had any interest in. She took the number. She signed the paper and was gone by the end of the month. Randall clicked to another screen. Then there's Camille. I know Camille's story. You know part of it. Randall looked at him directly. Marcus. Camille Okafor had been at Vertex for 4 years. Excellent performance reviews. She'd had a documented conversation with her director about the senior director track. She was on the path. Marcus waited. The senior director position that's currently open, Randall said. The one Simone is being considered for. That position opened up because Camille left. The diner moved around them. A waitress refilled Marcus's coffee. Somewhere behind them a man was explaining something to someone about interest rates. The ordinary noise of ordinary people having ordinary mornings. Darius pushed Camille out, Randall said, and Simone moved into the space she left. Marcus looked at the table. So everything Simone has at that company came after Camille was gone, Randall said, carefully, not unkindly. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was just. Marcus had gone into this knowing his wife had been unfaithful. What he was understanding now was larger and harder, that the affair and the career advancement were not separate things. That they had been built on the same foundation. That a woman named Lorraine Webb had lost 8 years of work to a signed paper. And a woman named Camille Okafor had lost her professional future. And both of them had been replaced and neither replacement had asked why. He thought about Simone that morning in the kitchen. Darius thinks I'm ready for the director position. He thought about the look on her face when she said it. Genuine pride, real ambition, real belief in herself. He thought she didn't know the whole of it. He thought she chose not to know. And then there is a difference between those two things. And it matters. And she is still responsible for it. There's one more thing, Randall said. He pulled up an email chain. Not explicit. Nothing that would shock anyone on its own. But intimate in the specific way that has no legitimate business existing between a supervisor and his direct report. The language of people who have decided the rules were written for other people. Marcus read through it. Then Randall scrolled to the last exchange. Sent on a Tuesday evening 4 months ago. Darius to Simone. When the time comes, and it's coming, we need to move. Smart, get the promotion locked in first. Don't tip anything at home. Marcus is analytical. Give him a start looking and he will. So don't give him one. Get your position secured. Then you control the timeline. Marcus read that paragraph 3 times. Set the mug down. Men like Marcus, he said quietly. Yeah, he thought. You're right about that, Darius. You're absolutely right about that, he thought. And you have no idea what analytical actually means. He closed the laptop screen gently, like he was putting something to rest, and looked at Randall across the table. I want to do this right, he said. All the way right. That takes time. I know. And you have to keep living like nothing's changed. I've been doing that since Thursday. Randall looked at him for a long moment, taking inventory of something. Yeah, he said. I can see that. He reached into his bag and slid a folded piece of paper across the table. One more name. Lorraine Webb is in Memphis now. I tracked her down through a former colleague. I haven't contacted her. That's your call. Marcus looked at the paper, folded it, put it in his shirt pocket. I'll need a lawyer first, he said. You already have one in mind. It wasn't a question. Randall had known Marcus since they were 19 years old. He knew when a decision had already been made. Dennis Hartwell, Marcus said. When? This afternoon. He left the diner a few minutes later, stepped into the cold morning air, stood on the sidewalk for a moment with his hands in his pockets. Then he drove west, not toward Buckhead, not yet. He drove the long way, without planning it, through neighborhoods he knew and some he didn't, past a school where kids were lined up at the entrance in their coats, past a church with a hand-painted sign out front that said, "The truth will not wait for a convenient time." He drove until he ended up, as he sometimes did without quite deciding to, on the block with Bernard's. Technically, it had a real name. Technically, there was a sign above the door with that name on it. But everyone who went there called it Bernard's, because Bernard had been behind that counter for 31 years. And the sign was really just a formality at this point. Marcus pushed open the door. The bell above it made the sound it always made. One of the last analog things in his life. Bernard did not look up from the griddle. Eggs over easy, wheat toast, no butter. Not a question. Never a question with Bernard, just the immediate and total recall of 20 years of consistent orders. Same as always, Marcus said. He sat at the counter, the stool that had always felt like his. A man 3 stools down was reading a physical newspaper, the actual paper kind, folded in half, and Marcus watched him for a moment and felt something close to envy, the simplicity of a world that fit inside folded paper. The plate arrived without ceremony. Bernard poured coffee without being asked, refilled it twice without being acknowledged. Marcus ate. He didn't think about anything in particular, just ate. Let the food be food. Let the diner be a diner. Let the 20 minutes be 20 minutes that belonged to nobody, and nothing except the counter and the plate and the coffee. When he stood to go and put his money down, Bernard finally looked up. He looked at Marcus with the directness of a man who has watched enough people sit at his counter to know the difference between someone who came in hungry and someone who came in needing to sit down. Whatever it is, Bernard said, you already know what you're going to do. Marcus looked at him. How do you know that? Because you ate clean, Bernard said. Men who don't know what they're doing pick at their food. He turned back to the griddle. Marcus walked out, sat in his car for a moment in the cold, then drove to Buckhead. Her office was not what he had imagined. No mahogany, no leather the color of old money. Just a clean room with good light, 2 chairs across from a desk, and a window looking out on a courtyard where a single dogwood tree was bare for winter. A room that said, I don't need to impress you, I need to help you. Denise Hartwell was in her early 50s, precise in her movements. The kind of person who let silence do work so she didn't have to waste words. She listened to Marcus for 22 minutes without writing anything down or interrupting once. When he finished, she folded her hands on the desk. "You have a strong case," she said. "I know. I need to ask you something first." She looked at him steadily. "Is there any part of you that wants to try to save the marriage?" He thought about it. Actually thought about it. Not as a performance of deliberation, but as a genuine question he owed an honest answer to. He thought about Simone's hand over his at dinner last week. "I know I've been distracted. I want to fix that." He thought about the email. Marcus is analytical. Don't give him a reason to start looking. He thought about Lorraine Webb signing a paper and disappearing. About Camille in a hotel lobby with an envelope she'd carried for 2 years. He thought about whoever came after Simone. Because there would be someone after Simone. There always was with men like Darius Calloway in companies like Vertex where the arithmetic said NDAs were cheaper than accountability. "No," he said. Denise nodded once, uncapped her pen. "Then let's talk about what we can build." She laid it out clearly and without theater. In Georgia, adultery carried weight in property division and alimony determinations. Given the income disparity, Simone's salary was approaching double Marcus's, and given her documented role in the breakdown of the marriage, the terms would favor him. The house, most likely. Rehabilitative alimony, legal fees covered. "There's more than just the divorce," Marcus said. "Tell me." He told her about Camille, about Lorraine Webb, about the patent at Vertex, about the NDAs used as erasure tools, about a company that had received multiple HR complaints and chosen revenue over accountability every single time. Denise was quiet for a moment after he finished. If Camille Okafor and Lorraine Webb were willing to file formal EEOC complaints, together, with documentation, with the timeline Randall has built, the NDAs become very difficult to enforce. Courts have been consistent. An NDA cannot shield ongoing patterns of harassment. If the behavior continued after they signed, the agreement is compromised. So the paper she signed doesn't protect him. Not if the behavior continued. And based on what you've described, it did. She made a note. "The question is whether they'll come forward." "Camille came to me," Marcus said. "She sat down in a hotel lobby and handed me an envelope she'd been carrying for 2 years. She's ready." "And Lorraine Webb?" "Randall is working on it." Another. "There's a journalist," Denise said. She set her pen down and looked at him in the particular way of someone about to say something they've been waiting to say. "Evelyn Cross, Atlanta Business Chronicle. She's been developing a story on workplace culture in pharmaceutical marketing for the better part of a year. She has an internal Vertex source. She's been waiting for someone willing to go on record." Marcus looked at her. "How do you know that?" "Because Evelyn called me 8 months ago looking for clients who might be willing to speak." A pause. "I told her I'd keep my eyes open." He sat with that. "You knew something was coming." "I knew something was already happening," Denise said. "I didn't know who the right person would be." She looked at him across the desk. "Is it you?" He thought about Aunt Harriet. "Life moves fast, Marcus." He thought about Bernard. "You already know what you're going to do." "Yes," he said. Denise picked up her pen. "Then, here's what we need to do, and here's the order we need to do it in." They worked for 90 minutes. By the time Marcus left her office, the courtyard outside her window had gone from pale afternoon light to early dusk. He sat in his car in the parking structure and called Randall. "Can you reach Lorraine Webb this week?" "Already left a message. Tell her she's not alone. Tell her there are others. Tell her Denise Hartwell's name." "Done." "How are you?" "That's not what I asked." Marcus looked at the concrete wall of the parking structure. Gray and unremarkable and entirely honest in the way that concrete walls are. "I'm doing what needs doing," he said. "That's all I've got right now." "That's enough," Randall said. "Second ring, brother, any time." Marcus drove home, made dinner. Was already at the st when someone came through the door at 7:40. The week that followed was the longest of Marcus Delaney's life. Not because of what was happening, because of what wasn't happening yet. He went to school, taught his classes. Graded papers with his red pen at the kitchen table each evening. He made dinners that Simone sometimes came home for and sometimes didn't. He said good morning and good night, and passed the salt and asked about her day. He performed the architecture of a marriage with such precision that he sometimes frightened himself. Wednesday evening, Simone came home talking about Darius with an animation that had been missing from her voice for months when she talked about anything else. His confidence ahead of the director announcement. His talent for reading a room, his belief in her. Marcus listened, refilled her wine glass, asked the appropriate follow-up questions. And in the morning, before she woke up, he sat with his coffee and let himself feel what he'd been managing all week. Not anger, past anger now. Something colder and more clarifying. The understanding that Darius Calloway was not a man who had made one bad decision in a moment of weakness. He was a man who had built a system, who had learned that ambition made people vulnerable, who had learned that institutions chose profit over people every single time you gave them the option, who had operated inside that knowledge for years, and who had at some point looked at Marcus Delaney and decided he was the easiest variable in the equation. Men like Marcus. Thursday morning brought a call from Randall. Lorraine Webb, she'll talk? She's been wanting to talk for 2 years. She just needed to know she wasn't the only one. A pause. I told her about Camille. I told her about you, she cried. Then she said, give me 24 hours. Randall. Yeah, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thursday evening, Marcus sent an email. He had rewritten it 4 times over 3 days. Not because he didn't know what to say. Because he was precise about how he said it. Because some communications needed to be exactly right. He sent it to Gloria Calloway. He had found her email through a professional directory. She had a listing from her time working full-time before the children. The email was factual, not emotional. He documented what he knew and what he had documented. He told her he understood this would be devastating. He asked, and this was the sentence he'd rewritten most carefully, whether she was ready for what came fully with the truth. He sent it at 9:17 p.m. Simone was in the home office on a work call. He could hear her voice through the door. Professional, assured, occasionally laughing. He washed the dinner dishes, dried them, put them away, went to the back porch and stood in the November cold for a few minutes. The oak tree in the yard had lost most of its leaves by now, just the bare structure of it, visible against the darker sky, still standing, still exactly what it was regardless of what the season had taken from it. He went back inside. Friday morning. Simone was barely out the door when his phone rang. Unknown number. Georgia area code, he answered. Mr. Delaney. A woman's voice, measured the way things are measured when every word has been because you've learned what happens when you choose wrong. Yes, this is Gloria Calloway. 1 second of silence, the particular kind that comes before something that cannot be undone. Mrs. Calloway, I received your email. A pause, not hesitation, composure. I've suspected for 14 months. I want you to understand that before you say anything else. I've had 14 months to prepare myself for this conversation. He registered that. Send me everything, she said. Before I do, when this comes out, it won't be quiet. There are other women, there's a journalist. The company will be involved, it will be public. I know, your children. My children have a father who has been lying to their mother for over a year, Gloria said. That is already true. What changes on Monday is that someone will know it besides me. A silence. I've been working with an attorney, she said, for 3 months. Stared at the kitchen wall. You've been preparing. Someone had to, he thought. 2 people. On opposite ends of this same wreckage, both already moving. Mr. Delaney, yes. I'm sorry about your wife, the one you thought you had. He thought about how to answer that. I'm sorry about your husband, he said. The one you thought you had. Yes, she said quietly. That's exactly it. She hung up. Marcus sat at the kitchen table for a long time after that. The coffee in his mug gone cold. The morning moving on outside the window without him. Then he picked up his phone, called Denise. Monday, he said. We're ready. I'll call Evelyn Cross, Denise said. And Marcus, get some rest this weekend. You're going to need to be steady. He almost laughed. That I can do, he said. Sunday evening. Simone found him in the backyard in the late afternoon, raking the last of the fallen leaves. She came out in her old college sweatshirt, joined him without being asked. They worked together in the rhythm they'd developed over years. She shrieked, he bagged. The leaves made the particular sound of late November letting go. Their neighbor waved from across the fence. A dog down the street barked twice and stopped. The light came through the bare branches of the oak tree at a low angle that turned everything briefly gold. Marcus. He looked up. She had stopped raking, was looking at him with an expression he recognized, the one she used when she was trying to locate him emotionally, the one that meant she'd noticed something she couldn't name. Are we okay? She said. He thought about Charlotte, about an envelope, about Lorraine Webb and Camille Okafor, and Gloria Calloway sitting in her Brookhaven house with 3 months of preparation behind her. He thought about Monday morning. He thought about what steadiness actually meant. He smiled, quiet and certain. "You're okay?" She held his eyes for a moment longer, then, "Good, dickhead." She went back to raking. Marks picked up the bag. They finished the yard as the last of the light left. That night, after dinner, after Simone went upstairs, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his red pen and his stack of student essays. He picked up the top one, read the opening paragraph, made a note in the margin, picked up the next one. His phone was beside him. At 10:47 p.m., a message from Denise, everything confirmed. Camille and Lorraine's attorney briefed. Evelyn files the story at noon Monday. Papers serve at 10. Are you ready? He set the essay down, picked up the pen, typed back with his other hand. Ready. Put the phone face down, picked the pen back up, kept grading, because that was the job. And he had never once not shown up for the job. And tomorrow was still a school day, and his students still needed their essays back. Some things don't stop for the storms in your life. Some things you hold on to not because the storm hasn't come, but because you refuse to let it take the things that were already yours. Monday came in without ceremony, no thunder, no sign. Just the slow gray arrival of a December morning through the bedroom curtains. Just the house making its house sounds. Just Marcus Delaney already sitting at the kitchen table at 5:23 a.m., hands around a mug watching the darkness outside the window decide to become something else. He had slept 4 hours, maybe less, it didn't matter. The French press sat on the counter behind him, already done. He'd made it on autopilot, 4 minutes, no shortcuts, and carried it to the table and sat down and looked at the wall and thought about nothing in particular, which was a lie. He thought about everything, but in the specific way of a man who has finished deciding and is now simply waiting for the world to catch up. Upstairs, Simone was still asleep. He could hear her. The particular rhythm of her breathing when she'd had a good night, deep and even and entirely at peace. The sound of someone who had gone to bed believing the shape of her life was secure. She didn't know that by noon today, that shape would be unrecognizable. He sat with that, not with pleasure, not with any satisfaction, just with the weight of it, the specific gravity of knowing something the person upstairs did not know. His phone was on the table. Face up, he'd made that decision last night, no more face down. Whatever came in, he would see it as it arrived. 6:47 a.m., Denise, Camille and Lorraine confirmed. Their attorney filed the EEOC notice at 9 p.m. last night. It's already in Vertex's legal department inbox, waiting for them when they open this morning. Simultaneous with the formal filing at 9 a.m. No warning, no grace period. They walk in together, he read it twice, set the phone down, picked the mug up. 7:03, Randall. Gloria Calloway's attorney filed the divorce petition this morning. 8:45 a.m. opening. She was first in line. She didn't wait for anyone. Marcus sat with that. Gloria Calloway. 14 months of suspicion. 3 months of attorneys and preparation and choosing her moment. And this morning she had walked into a courthouse at opening time and been the first person through the door. She had been ready longer than any of them. He thought about her voice on the phone. Someone had to. 7 Fee, Denise again. Papers ready. Server confirmed for 10 a.m. Vertex lobby. He'll ask for her by name. Marcus looked at his phone, then looked toward the ceiling. He thought about Simone upstairs. The charcoal blazer she'd lay out the night before, because she had a team meeting this morning. The way she moved through her morning routine with the efficient energy of someone with somewhere important to be. The way she'd kiss him goodbye, quick, distracted, already somewhere else in her mind. She would go to work this morning believing she was about to receive the best news of her professional life. He felt something he hadn't expected to feel. Not satisfaction, not relief, sorrow. The clean kind, the kind without rot in it. The kind that comes from wishing, genuinely and completely, that things had been different, while knowing with equal completeness that they weren't. He let himself feel it for exactly as long as the mug took to empty. Then he got up, rinsed the mug, got dressed. Simone came downstairs at 7:32, charcoal blazer, the silk blouse underneath, the burgundy one she wore when she wanted the room to take her seriously before she opened her mouth, her good earrings, her hair done with the kind of care that meant she'd been up earlier than usual. She looked like a woman dressed for her own triumph, which in her mind she was. She poured coffee, checked her phone. Something on the screen made her smile, quick and private, and she set the phone face down on the counter before she looked up. Big day, she said, to herself as much as to him. Yeah, Darius wants to make the director announcement formally at the 11 o'clock team meeting. She looked up. both hands around her mug. Marcus, this is actually it. He looked at her. She was glowing, genuinely. The way she glowed when something she'd worked for was finally arriving. He had loved that about her once, that specific brightness. The way ambition looked on her face when it was about to be rewarded. I know, he said. She crossed the kitchen and kissed him. Not the quick, distracted kind. A real one. Long enough to mean something. Thank you, she said, pulling back. He looked at her. For what? For being patient. With the hours, she held his gaze. I know this year hasn't been easy. After today, things settle down. I promise. Hold his gaze for 1 second. Go, he said. You don't want to be late. She smiled, picked up her bag, her travel mug, her keys. At the door, she turned one more time. The morning light came through the window beside the door and caught her at an angle that made her look. Briefly, unkindly. Exactly like she had the first time he'd ever seen her. Standing in someone's backyard eating cornbread and laughing at something on her phone. I love you, she said. He looked at her from across the kitchen. Drive safe, he said. The door closed. He stood in the kitchen, did not move for 30 seconds, then picked up his bag, his keys, his lesson plans for the day, and drove to Carver Academy. First period began at 8:15. 22 juniors. The particular low-grade chaos of 17-year-olds settling into their seats. Phones disappearing into pockets because Marcus had a rule and enforced it without drama, which somehow made them respect it more than if he'd made it a confrontation. He stood at the front of the room. The lesson was on the Montgomery bus boycott. He'd written it into the curriculum 3 weeks ago, before Charlotte, before any of this. It had nothing to do with what was happening outside this building this morning. Except it had everything to do with it. People always get this wrong, he said, moving to the board. They think Rosa Parks was spontaneous, that she was just a tired woman who didn't feel like getting up. That's the version that got taught for years. He wrote 2 words on the board. Planned, ready. The NAACP had been looking for the right case for months. They needed the right person, the right moment, the right legal framework already built before anyone made a visible move. Rosa Parks wasn't just a woman who sat down. She was a woman who had been prepared to sit down. And the people around her had been prepared for what came after. A student named Jasmine. Front row. Always front row. Mr. Delaney, was she scared? Paused. Looked at her. Outside this building, in the offices of Vertex Pharma Solutions in Buckhead, a process server was preparing to walk into a lobby with a manila envelope addressed to Simone Delaney. Outside this building, Camille Okafor and Lorraine Webb were walking together through the doors of a federal building on Spring Street, carrying the documentation they had been carrying, in one form or another, for years. Inside this room, 22 17-year-olds waited for their teacher to answer a question. I think she was terrified, Marcus said, but she understood something that took me a long time to learn. Fear and weakness are not the same thing. You can be afraid down to your bones and still make the right choice. That's not the absence of fear. That's what courage actually is. Jasmine wrote something down. Marcus looked at the window for one moment, just one, then looked back at his class. Let's talk about the 381 days that came after, he said. He taught. Second period. Third. He moved through the morning with the specific focus of someone who has decided that the job in front of him is the job. Not the thing happening across the city, not the phone in his pocket, not the sounds he'd heard through a hotel room door 2 weeks ago. His students needed him present, so he was present. The bell rang ending third period at 11:47 a.m. He stepped into the hallway, looked at his phone. The missed calls had started at 10:31. 6 of them, all Simone. He had felt the vibrations in his pocket during second period and taught through them. Taught through the third and fourth vibrations. Kept his voice level while discussing the economic tactics of the bus boycott, the carpooling networks, the community organization that made 381 days of walking sustainable. And let the phone do what phones do. Now standing in the hallway between classes, students flowing around him, he pressed play. First message. 10:31 a.m. Marcus. There's a man in the lobby. He asked for me by name, and he handed me, Marcus, these are divorce papers. At work, in the lobby, in front of 3 of my colleagues. A breath. Controlled. Barely. You need to call me right now. Second message. 2:44 a.m. Marcus, please. I don't understand. If something is wrong, we talk about it. We always talk. That's what we do. Please just call to me and tell me what's happening. The control slipping now, not gone. Zip. Third message, 11:02 a.m. Something is happening with Darius. HR called him in. There are people. I don't know what's happening. Marcus, did you do, please? The first crack in the composure. Not anger yet. Something worse. Dawning. Fourth message. 11:19 a.m. Okay, long pause. The sound of a door closing. A but's found somewhere in the building. Okay, I think I understand now. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I think I understand. Her voice had changed. Gone smaller. Marcus, please call me, please. Fifth message. 11:38 a.m. 18 seconds of silence. Then very quietly, I'm sorry, I am so sorry, please. Sixth message. 11:51 a.m. No preamble, no performance. I love you. I know that probably sounds hollow right now. I know I don't have the right to say it, but it's true. It was always true. And I need you to know that even if you never call me back, even if I never talk to you again, it was real, Marcus. What we had was real. And I threw it away and the message ended. The recording had cut her off. He saved all 6. Every one of them. For evidence. He had enough evidence. He saved them because they were the most honest she had been with him in months. And because someday, not now, not for a long time, he thought he might want to have them. To hear her voice saying something true. To remember that whatever else was real and whatever wasn't, the grief in those messages was real. He put the phone back in his pocket, walked to the faculty lounge, ate the lunch he'd packed that morning, chewed, swallowed, drank water, then walked back to his classroom for 4th period. The email from Darius Calloway arrived at 2:17 p.m. Subject line, man to man. Marcus read it at the end of the school day, sitting in his car in the parking lot. The subject line alone told him everything about what was inside. The specific entitlement of a man who had never genuinely reckoned with consequences, addressing the one person who had decided to give him some. The email was long. It moved through several sections without committing to any of them. It began with reframing. Whatever Simone told you, whatever happened. As though the problem was Marcus's perception rather than Darius's actions. It pivoted to minimizing. These things are complicated. Feelings develop. Wasn't planned. As though the planning evidenced in his own emails didn't exist. It had to timid something that resembled remorse before abandoning it for thinly veiled threat. And then it landed, finally, on appeal. You are hurting people who don't deserve this. My children don't deserve this. Gloria doesn't deserve this. I'm asking you man to man to step back and let people handle their own marriages in private. What you're doing is vindictive, and it's going to destroy lives that didn't need to be destroyed. Marcus read it all the way through. He thought about a woman named Lorraine Webb, who had worked somewhere for 8 years and been handed a number on a piece of paper and told to choose. He thought about Camille Okafor sitting in a hotel lobby with an envelope she'd carried for 2 years because she didn't know who to give it to. He thought about Gloria Calloway, first in line at a courthouse at 8:45 in the morning. He thought about Darius writing men like Marcus to his wife. He hit delete. Did not reply. 'Cause some silences are not empty. Some silences are complete. He called Simone. She answered before the first ring finished. Marcus, I was in Charlotte, Simone. Silence, immediate and total. Floor 14, room 1407. I stood in that hallway long enough to know everything I needed to know. He could hear her breathing fast, then slower, then controlled. How long have you known? She said. Long enough. Marcus, Darius is telling his attorneys you pursued him, that it was mutual, that you were the one who made it. That's a lie. Fast. Certain. The first thing she'd said that came without preparation. I know, he said. He told me we were going to. She stopped, started again. He said by this time next year we'd both be free, that we'd file at the same time. I know what he said. Marcus looked at the windshield, the parking lot. A student crossing toward the bus loop with a backpack twice the size of him. I read it. A sound from her end. Breath and something else. He dropped you, Marcus said. The moment this went public. The same way he dropped Camille Okafor. The same way he dropped Lorraine Webb. This is not a man who was in love with you. This is a man who had a system. And you walked into it, and now he's making sure you take the fall alone. Long silence. I know, she said quietly. The admission landed between them. Marcus, I'm sorry, I know. Not sorry I got caught. I need you to understand that. I'm sorry for what I did. For what I chose. Every day for 8 months chose it and I moan. She stopped. Have your lawyer call Denise Hartwell, he said. That's all I have to say right now. A silence, different from the others. Not panicked, not bargaining, just present. Is that all? She said. He thought about 6 years, the ramen apartment, the backyard wedding. The kitchen renovation and the argument about cabinet hardware that had made them both laugh so hard they couldn't finish the argument. The card in the nightstand drawer. You are the steadiest person I have ever known. Take care of yourself, he said, and ended the call. He sat in the parking lot. A long time. The sun was already low. December shortened everything. The trees at the edge of the school property bare and honest against the pale sky. He thought, it's done. He thought, not done. Beginning, he thought. There's a difference, know the difference. Then he drove home, made dinner, ate alone for the first time in 6 years. It was quiet in a way he hadn't expected. Not the quiet of emptiness, something different. Something he didn't have a name for yet but thought he might in time. He washed the dish, dried it, put it away, went to bed, slept 7 hours, the first real sleep in 2 weeks. In the morning he got up and went to school. And the days that followed began to be different. Not better yet, not worse. Different. The way a room is different when you've opened a window that was painted shut for years. The air changed. Strange at first, then necessary. Evelyn Cross's article ran at noon on Monday. He read it on his phone between third and fourth period. She'd led with the pattern, not with Marcus, not with the marriage, with the institutional failure, with the years of complaints received and buried, with the women who had signed papers and disappeared. Lorraine Webb named and quoted. Camille Okafor named and quoted. The numbers, the timeline, the corporate arithmetic that had decided one man's revenue was worth more than multiple women's careers and dignity. Halfway through the piece, his quote, his name. I'm not doing this because I'm angry. Marcus Delaney, an Atlanta high school history teacher, told this reporter. I'm doing this because if nobody says anything, he does it again. And the next woman won't have a Camille Okafor sitting in a hotel lobby waiting to warn her. He read that. His words in print. His name attached. He felt something settle in his chest that had been unsettled for 2 weeks, not triumph, arrival. By Tuesday afternoon, Vertex's stock had dropped 6%. 3 major client companies issued statements about reviewing their partnerships. The industry blogs found the story. The story found other people who had other stories. 2 more former Vertex employees contacted Evelyn directly. She ran a second piece on Wednesday with their accounts included. Wednesday afternoon, Vertex's board issued a statement. Darius Calloway's employment was terminated effective immediately for violations of company policy and professional conduct standards. Marcus found out from Randall. 1 text, 2 words. It's done. He was standing in the school parking lot after the last bell. He read the text, put his phone in his coat pocket, looked at the sky, gray and even and completely neutral about everything that had just happened. He waited to feel something large, something cinematic. Instead, he felt something small and permanent. A door closing softly in a distant room, not a slam, not an echo, just closed. He drove to Denise's office. She had news. Simona's attorney called this morning, she said. They want to settle, quickly and cleanly. She laid out the terms. The house. Marcus keeps it entirely. Simone signs over her share. 2 years of rehabilitative alimony, $2,200 a month. All legal fees covered by Simone's side, standard clauses. And notably, Denise said, she's not asking you to be quiet. Whatever you've said, whatever you want to say going forward, she's not asking for silence. He registered that. It meant something. He wasn't sure it changed anything, but it meant something. Tell them yes, he said. Marcus, I don't want to drag it out. She knows what she did. I know what she did. A longer process doesn't make it more true, and it doesn't make me feel better. Tell them yes. Denise looked at him for a moment. Okay, she said. I'll get the paperwork moving. He drove home. The house quiet. He stood in the kitchen for a moment, looked around. The coffee maker on the counter, the Keurig Simone had bought 2 years ago that he'd never used, her concession to the mornings she was running late. His French press beside it. The photos on the refrigerator held by magnets she'd collected from every city she'd traveled to for work. He made coffee, slow, 4 minutes. Drank it at the table where he'd been sitting when Aunt Harriet called 3 weeks ago with $2,800 and a piece of advice about moving fast. He thought, she was right. He thought, and sometimes fast is not the direction you mean. He picked up his phone, called Aunt Harriet. She answered on the 3rd ring. Baby, how are you? I'm okay, he said. I wanted to call and tell you I used the money. Did you take her somewhere nice? He thought about Charlotte, the Meridian Grand, 24 roses. Flo, I did, he said. It was important. Good, Harriet said. That's good, Marcus. He talked to her for 20 minutes, about nothing specific. about her garden and the weather in Savannah and his students and a documentary she'd been watching about national parks. Ordinary things. The ordinary texture of a life continuing. When they hung up, he sat for a while longer, then got up, started grading. 3 weeks later, Simone came for her things on a Saturday morning in December. The air cold and clean, the light thin and honest the way December light is. No softening, no flattery, just what's there. She arrived at 10 with a friend who waited in a car at the curb. Neutral presence, there to help carry boxes, not there for anything else. Marcus had offered to be out when she came. She'd said no. Said she didn't want to walk through the house without him there. He understood that. She came in. He'd made coffee. Not for any particular reason, just because it was 10 a.m. and that was what the kitchen was for. She saw the cup on the counter. Didn't say anything. Drank it. They moved through the house carefully. The specific carefulness of two people navigating around something fragile that they both knew was already broken. She took her books. The mirror that had been her grandmother's. The art she'd chosen herself over the years. Pieces Marcus had never fully understood, but had made wall space for because she loved them. Kitchen things that had been hers before they were theirs. A lamp from the bedroom she'd always liked more than he had. She left the French press without being asked. He stood in the doorway of the living room while she made her passes through it. Watching her. The way her hand rested briefly on the back of the couch. The way she paused at the window that looked out on the yard. She turned. I did love you, she said. I need you to know that. He looked at her. I know. It wasn't performance. The whole thing. I got lost. She shook her head slowly. I've been trying to understand when that happened. When I stopped being someone I recognized. And I don't have a clean answer. I let something small start and I kept letting it. And somewhere in there I stopped asking whether I was still the person I thought I was. He looked at her for a moment. I believe, he said. You shouldn't have to. No, he agreed. But she looked at the floor, then back at him. How are you so? She stopped, tried again. How are you not angrier? He thought about that honestly. I was, he said. I just didn't let it make my decisions. She looked at him for a long moment. Something moved across her face that he didn't have a name for. Not gratitude, not absolution. Something quieter than both. I'm going to Houston, she said. There's a position. Smaller company. Good, is it? Starting over is good, he said. As long as you actually start over. As long as you don't just bring what happened here somewhere new and call it different. She looked at him. I'm going to try, she said. I believe that too, he said, and he did. She picked up the last box. Walked to the door. Marcus. He looked at her. I hope whoever comes next for you. She stopped, started again. I hope they see what I was too distracted to see. He held her gaze. Go, he said gently. You've got things to do. She left. The door closed. He stood in the living room. In the space that was now, for the first time in 6 years, entirely his. Not empty, not hollow, just. He stood there for a while and let it be what it was. Then he went to the paint store. He came home with a color called forest depth. Dark green. Almost black in low light. The color he'd pointed to in a magazine 3 years ago, and Simone's had said was too dark for a bedroom, and he'd agreed without much argument because it wasn't worth the argument. He painted the bedroom that afternoon. By himself. Music on. Something his father used to play on Sunday mornings. Old soul records that had nothing to do with any of this, and everything to do with feeling like yourself. Windows cracked despite the December cold. The smell of paint and winter air moving through the room. He painted carefully, cutting along the ceiling and the baseboards with a brush before rolling, the way his father had taught him. Slow things first. It took 4 hours. When he finished, he stood in the doorway and looked at it, dark and quiet and exactly right, exactly what he'd wanted. He cleaned the brush, put the lid back on the paint can, opened the window a few more inches to let the smell out. Then he sat on the edge of the bed. His bed in his room, in his house, painted the color he had chosen. And he was quiet for a long time. He thought about Charlotte, about an elevator opening on the 14th floor, about a woman in a hotel lobby who sat down without being asked, about a diner in Midtown and an attorney in Buckhead and a phone call from a woman named Gloria Calloway who had been first in line, about 22 juniors who had asked good questions while the world outside their classroom rearranged itself, about 12 days of patience that had looked from the outside exactly like nothing. He thought about his father. Slow things first. The day will rush you soon enough. He thought, yes, he thought, but the slow things last. He got up, turned off the light, went to the kitchen, made dinner. ate at the table where he always ate. In the morning he got up and made coffee. French press. 4 minutes. Drank it at the kitchen window, watching the oak tree in the yard catch the early light. Still standing, still exactly what it was. Some things you hold on to not because the world requires it, because you do. 5 months later, a letter arrived, handwritten, no return address, Atlanta postmark. He opened it at the kitchen table on a Tuesday evening in May. The windows opened for the first time since fall. The smell of the yard coming through the screen. 2 paragraphs. Her handwriting. He recognized it the way you recognize things that were once part of your daily life and have since become something else. Mr. Delaney, I heard that Vertex settled. I don't know if you know, but Lorraine and I both received formal written apologies from the company. Not just money, an actual letter acknowledging what happened. I have waited 2 years to have someone put in writing that what was done to me actually happened. I wanted to say thank you. Not because you fought for me, you were fighting for yourself. And that's exactly right, that's how it should be. But because of that, something changed. For me, and maybe for whoever comes next who won't have to sit in a hotel lobby with an envelope and hope the right person walks by. Thank you for not staying quiet. Sio, he read it twice, set it on the table, picked up his phone, pulled up the contact Randall had given him months ago, typed a message. Thank you for sitting down at that table. That was the beginning of all of it. I hope Philadelphia is treating you well. He set the phone down, finished his coffee, sat for a while in the quiet of the kitchen with the May air coming through the screen and the yard doing what yards do in May, growing without asking permission, green and imperfect and entirely alive. He was seeing someone. Her name was Sandra. She taught English 2 schools over. She laughed the way people laugh when they've decided life is too short to be cautious about joy. They'd had 4 dinners in one afternoon at a museum and a long phone call that had gone past midnight and surprised them both. He wasn't rushing anything. He had learned a great deal about patience, about what it looked like from the outside, still, quiet, unremarkable, and what it actually was on the inside. A form of readiness, a form of respect for what was coming, a refusal to let urgency make choices that deserved more. He would not rush this. He would let it be what it was. He picked up the stack of essays on the table, his red pen. A student named Dion had written something in the last paragraph that Marcus had underlined before setting it aside to return to. History teaches us that the loudest moments are always preceded by the longest silences. And the people who understood that, who used the silence instead of fighting it, are the ones who changed things. He looked at that sentence for a moment. Then he picked up his pen, wrote in the margin, Dion, this is exactly right. Save this thought. It will serve you. He set the essay on the finished pile, picked up the next one. Outside, the fireflies had begun. The first few tentative ones, testing, blinking on and off in the yard as the last of the light left the sky. Marcus graded his papers. The fireflies blinked. The yard was quiet and green and full of things growing. And Marcus Delaney sat at his kitchen tea table in his house. His house, the colors he'd chosen, furnished the way he'd wanted. Quiet in the way that was now simply his life, and did the work he'd always done, because he had always shown up for the work. Before Charlotte, during it, after it, through the fire and out the other side. Still himself, still steady, still the man on the card in the nightstand drawer, the one she'd been right about even when she'd forgotten it. The steadiest person still. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment below. Tell me what it brought up for you. Tell me about the quiet strength you've witnessed or carried yourself, the patience that looked like nothing until it looked like everything. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next story is about a woman everyone stopped calling, stopped believing in, stopped counting on, and what she quietly built while nobody was watching. You will not see that ending coming. I promise.